This is It's Gonna Be Okay with Dr. Roseanne, and today we're talking about oppositional defiant behaviors, non-compliant kids, managing angry, frustrated kids, really how to deal with oppositional behavior. And oppositional behavior can occur with any clinical issue. Some kids are a little more prone, as I like to say, to be a curmudgeon. And I know they're experiencing frustration just like we are. Sometimes people listen to the episodes and say, like, why are you saying it's hard on parents? It's hard on everybody, people. So, what is ODD? ODD is something called oppositional defiant disorder. I have a lot of beef with ODD, but really, oppositional behavior is, when there's an authority figure, the child, young adult is showing signs of anger and hostility with simple requests. Now, it is an actual clinical disorder. As I always say about ODD, I don't see a different brain profile. You know me, I love my QEG brain maps. So for me, oppositional defiant behavior is really part of always another larger clinical issue, mood disorder, ADD, other things. We can talk about it. It's real. It's very real, and it's a very real behavior. And I think some kids are just, like whenever I get an ODD kid, I go, what were they like as a baby? And they always say they were always like this. Now, I get some ODD kids that develop it after a trauma or some other things, but we'll talk about it. Now, we talk about these things in our Natural Solutions parenting group. So if you're not in our free Facebook group, hop over to drroseanne.com/group and join. Make sure to answer all the questions. We're not letting you in. So ODD, right, is when kids show these explosive reactions to simple requests. They don't like to be told what to do. And boy, they hate when you say no to them. I feel like saying no to them is the biggest trigger. So, how do you deal with oppositional behavior, right? What do we do? But before we get into that, I want to talk about ODD versus ADD. Everything gets put under ADD. I swear. Like you got anxiety, must be ADD. You got depression, must be ADD. And ODD and ADHD are two clinical conditions that are different. First of all, their brains look very different. They don't respond to the same treatments, and it tends to be more complex when ODD is here on the table, right? But they do co-occur at the same time. You can have both. And as I already stated, I never see ODD on its own. It's always part of a larger clinical condition, especially, when I'm doing brain maps, I can see that the behavior is there with another clinical issue. So when we're talking about how to deal with oppositional behavior, the first thing I'm going to tell you is what I say all the time. Remember, calm brain, happy family, is we're going to share our calm. Okay. So I'm not saying these are easy kids to parent. I'm not saying any of those things. These are hard kids. When you have a kid where you're like, wow, isn't it pretty out? No. Sometimes the conflict is at such a high level, the littlest things can set our kids off. And potentially they could have rejection sensitive dysphoria. And that's about 70% of people with ADHD also have that. And they just are so sensitive to every little bit criticism, rejection of any kind that they blow up on you. So you want to regulate yourself. You can share your anger, you can share your irritation, or you can share your calm. Now, I'm going to say that one of the ways that there are many ways I work on my nervous system: PEMF, neurofeedback, my magnesium bath. Tonight, I'm going to go in the sauna. I do something every day, multiple times a day. I do breath work. But I also take my magnesium every day. So if you want to take our Neurotastic Multi-Mag Brain Formula, you just go to drroseanne.com/magnesium. It is a one of its kind with the most bioavailable forms of magnesium for the brain. And it's one of the kind because it's the only product on the market, only company on the market that is designed for mental health of children and families. So give it a try. I'd love to hear about it. It's going to be pretty cool. We're going to be doing some pre and post brain maps to show people. So share your calm, number one. Clear boundaries and expectations. I find that one of the greatest sources of conflicts in any kind of parenting relationship is not clear boundaries and expectations. And when we aren't giving our kids clear boundaries, they're going to be individuals that don't set clear boundaries with other people. And that's not what you want, right? So letting people know in advance. Now, if you have an ODD kid, I like to put things in writing, even though they might rip it, or tell you to F off. Have it in writing so that it's clear, really important. Okay, this next one, you're going to say, what do you mean? Connect. You need to connect with your kid. When you're in a high friction relationship with your child, it's going to be a lot harder to want to spend time with them. They are getting caught up in the never-ending roller coaster of conflict with them will make it where you're finding little to connect on. And you need to connect. Kids need to connect. Every relationship, you have to connect in order to help to make your relationship be positive. So is that shooting hoops? Is that doing crafts or art? Is it going out for a walk? Is it getting down and playing video games with them? I don't care what it is. You've got to connect. You've got to find ways to connect and preserve the relationship, and it's on you. You're the adult. I don't care if your kid's 17 and, if your kid is doing this, my next piece of advice is remember the behavior isn't on purpose. I know you're going to say, oh, they're 17 years old, Roseanne. Oh, they're 19 years old. If their brain is dysregulated, nobody wants to act like this. Nobody wants to act angry and irritated on purpose. They're not doing this on purpose, right? And we'll talk about some of the things that you could do. Obviously, we talked about calming the brain of you, but your child's brain needs that, right? So just remember they're not doing this on purpose so that you don't personalize the behavior, right? But you want to avoid power struggles and pick your battles. So if you have a high conflict kid who's always looking for conflict, he or she's brain is always looking for conflict. Just even take them out of it, Marco, it's not Marco, it's Marco's brain is reacting to things. Like it just feels different, right? So pick your battles. So you're going to ignore as much as you possibly can, and you want to concentrate on the dial movers. So if you're really working on shaping a behavior to help with a larger issue, that's where you want to focus on, right? So, and we want to reinforce and shape desired behaviors. I know you might say, well, I got an ODD kid. What desired behaviors are there? Well, you got to start thinking differently, right? And hopefully you're getting mental health support, right, for yourself, for your child. So when we're thinking about shaping behaviors, right, of an ODD kid, we want to say like, wow, I noticed you were less angry this time. What do you think it's different, right? And you want to start getting them to think differently, start acknowledging and understanding, right? Even if it's the attempts, it's not the completed behaviors that we want to reinforce. And eventually the behaviors will start to turn. Whenever I have families who work with me one-to-one in our brain behavior reset program, they're often so resistant to the behavioral change. Certainly I work on calming the brain simultaneously. I mean, that's why I created magnesium first. You need a quick win. You need like a lifeline when you have these angry kids. And when you're emotionally dysregulated, you're just not going to respond in the same way. The brain doesn't allow it, right? So when we are shaping the behaviors, it's slow at first, right? But once we open up the door and we create some positivity in their brain, their subconscious brain is able to realize, I can do these things. You let go of the shame. It starts really happening. And that's where we want to teach coping skills. So a lot of our non-compliant kids are just quick to ignite, quick to get angry because they lack frustration tolerance and coping skills. And we have to create a window of tolerance. So we don't want to rescue our kids. We don't want to make it where everything is easy for them. I recently had somebody that is a rescuer of their kids' anxiety. And I'm actually in shock of her demands of what she wants from us in her office. to accommodate their child's anxiety. And their anxiety shows up in so many ways, from separation anxiety to hyperactivity and all these other things. And, just won't really get on those micro levels of the behavior and think it's just going to happen with some interventions besides behavioral support. You've got to teach coping skills. That means kids have to understand there will be points of stress. There will be things that are uncomfortable. Saying things like, well, how long do you think you're going to be uncomfortable? Right? Well, it's not going to last more than 15 minutes. Like, getting them to understand being uncomfortable is part of life. We don't have to catastrophize. We don't have to blow up, right? So with a kid who's oppositional, we often have these volcanoes, right? Right, these eruptions. So even starting with reinforcing, like, wow, you recovered quickly from that. Okay, I appreciate that. Let's take a moment to breathe. Okay. And then having these beautiful conversations like, oh, instead of us getting there to that level and that volcano eruption, what could we have done in the beginning? Right. Like, did you do something different this time? And when I work with kids, they'll usually, sometimes they're like, I don't know. But a lot of times they're like, okay, well, I stopped and took a breath. Or I remembered you said it wouldn't last more than 15 minutes. The whole day's not shot, right? Many of our ODD kids are glass half empty kids, and we've got to get them to see the glass half full. And it starts with you, starts with teaching coping skills, is so important. And for you to display healthy ways of responding. Don't get into the anger with them. Really work on sharing your calm, which is going to be a lot of work on your end. And I know you say I'm stressed, but just start with 10 minutes a day and weave in different points into your own life, breath work, all these other things. Now, if you're looking for support and you're looking to work with us one-on-one, you can go to drroseanne.com/help. Wherever you are in the journey, we're going to provide you a solution if it's not one-on-one. We have lots of really cool resources besides our multi-mag brain formula coming out. We also have parent kits for clinical issues. We have lots of cool things, and our Calm Brain community. So wherever you are in your journey is exactly where you need to be. Don't feel so alone. Don't feel so scared that you have a ODD non-compliant kid. Start tackling the behaviors day by day. Put your own oxygen mask on, my friend.